There you go.
All right. Thank
Have a seat.
you.
You guys, ultimately, what is unfolding in this country is nothing short of spiritual warfare. When you boil it all down, this is good versus evil. And I've asked Pastor Tim Thompson to come up and open us in prayer, pray for Michelle's safety as she goes around the country. Please welcome Pastor Tim Thompson of 412 Church.
Thanks, Don. All right, if you guys would, if you are so inclined, stand up, and if you would, bow your heads, close your eyes, and let's go before the Lord in prayer. Father in heaven, we come before you tonight with grateful hearts to know you and trust you as God. And as we live in this free nation, this nation built upon Judeo-Christian values, Father, we want to acknowledge that you are our God, and we pray that we as a people would turn back towards you, that we would call upon your name. Father, we want to pray tonight a special blessing upon Michelle, Lord, upon her ministry, even though she might not even see it as a ministry. Lord, it is a ministry to speak truth in a world that is so full of lies. And Lord, whenever somebody stands up to speak truth, there are so many people that want to come against it. So would you strengthen her? Would you encourage her? Would you embolden her? Would you protect her? Father, would you give her the right words to speak when it's time to speak? Lord, would you give her the wisdom to withhold her tongue, Lord, to not speak when you want her to be silent. But Lord, when she needs to speak, let her speak with unction. Let her speak with power. Let her speak with might. Lord, tonight, as we have this time together, would you use this to encourage her to see that there are people who want to know the truth? And Lord, would you encourage us with the truth? All these things tonight, I pray in the name of my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Thank you. Yes, if you guys would please remain standing. For those of you that aren't standing, please stand, and we're going to do the flag salute right now. And so if you would, please face the flag, put your right hand over your heart. Let's begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. USA, 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 USA.
Love it. USA, USA.
You guys are awesome. Michelle is awesome. Thank you, Pastor Tim, and thank you again to our sponsors. Here we are at long last.
This is caffeine right here.
This is it.
I love it.
This is it. We're excited to have you here. So let's begin the conversation again. Tell us a little bit about let's get a little personal. Let's let people know a little bit about what's it like to be Michelle Malkin out there on the front lines. Share with us a little bit about that personal story when you go to these ICE events, when you meet people, what motivates you? I mean, every day, 25 years, you said earlier.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that side of you before we get into the nuts and bolts of the book.
Well, I'm an open book. I have lived my life out in public for 25 plus years now. But one thing a lot of people don't know about me is that I wasn't always this mouthy. Surprise. And it wasn't a natural thing for me to speak in public. I failed my 7th grade speech class, for example. And it wasn't until I landed on a far left, crazy liberal campus, and I know that's redundant, but I went to a school out in the Midwest that had a reputation of being the UC Berkeley of Ohio. Some of you may have heard of this crazy little place. It was called Oberlin College. Among other things, the birthplace of this odious idea of sanctuary spaces, safe spaces, right? Where, of course, what they mean is safe for radical leftists and nobody else. Okay. I was a classmate of Stephanie Rawlings Blake, who was the mayor of Baltimore, who declared safe spaces for rioters during the Freddie Gray riots, the anti-cop anarchy.
So you went to school with
her.
You knew her.
Yes.
So were you Were you motivated anytime towards that to reach out to her? I mean, would she have remembered you from school?
Oh,
do you
I'm
think?
sure she would have remembered. See, the thing was,
She wouldn't take your call?
She was not. She wouldn't take my call. She was not as nutty back on campus, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yes.
All right.
Another famous Oberlin alum was Lena Dunham.
Wow.
Yes. And everything I needed to know about the far left, I really did get to experience as an undergrad at Oberlin. Oberlin is also the notorious home of the fake hate crime.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, many of them were perpetrated while I was an undergrad, and I knew something was going on. And it's this toxic metastasis of radical racial identity politics that has really warped the minds of generation of young people. And so that's when I really had to make a choice, because if I didn't speak for myself, I would have been not just culturally appropriated, but ideologically appropriated, because so many of these, I call them progressives of power, okay, purport to know what's best for people who happen to be female, minority. And in my case, of course, I was somebody who was the child of legal immigrants to this country. So they looked at my skin color, they looked at my eye shape, and they presumed that because of those identities, that I should automatically be enslaved by their orthodoxy. And I had to make a choice, and I said, no. I said, hell no. Hell no.
Well, you seem to have emerged from academia intact with your worldview.
Right.
Why do you think that is? What do you think insulated you from flipping like so many do?
The moral vaccines that my parents
Oh, okay.
immunize their children with. That's really what it's about. And my parents had a love and appreciation for this country that they inculcated in me and my younger brother from the time we were old enough to understand it. My maternal grandfather fought alongside American soldiers in the Philippines, was a survivor of the Bataan Death March. And when I was in third grade, he visited the United States for the first time. And there's only one place that he wanted to go, the Statue of Liberty.
Wow.
And so it's very interesting because, of course, you see the types of individuals and radicals that I expose in Open Borders, Inc. always appropriate the Statue of Liberty as theirs.
That little poem.
Right?
Yeah.
As if that poem was the founding document of this country. But they have warped the legacy and meaning. People don't realize that there's a motto on the Statue of Liberty, not just that poem, which was, by the way, an afterthought.
Exactly.
Right? It was a marketing gimmick 17 years later after the statue had been unveiled. But it says, liberty enlightening the world. And we're that torch. We represent hope. It doesn't say liberty resettling the entire world or liberty absorbing every last person who wants to come here. And so the idea of national sovereignty is something that was absorbed in my family, because we realized that in order for this dream to be extended to other desirable people around the world, we need to have a system that is orderly.
Right.
We need to have a system that is very discriminating. And I know that is a word that triggers a lot of people. We have to be very picky and choosy. Sure. Because this is a family and the family needs to be protected. And of course, what we've had over the last 25 plus years that I have made this a key marquee issue for me in my reporting is that we've totally lost control.
Well, we have, and by and large, what my assessment is that while we were busy working, while we were busy raising families, while we were busy putting people through college, the left has been termiting its way through our institutions. And so finally, we begin to see the brush fires of liberty starting to light up across the country. And so I want to fast forward. You 25 years you've been doing this. June of 2015, and this certain billionaire decides to come down an escalator with his wife. What went through your mind when that happened?
I was watching mesmerized like everyone else. Is this real? And of course, Donald Trump is somebody who had achieved an enormous amount of success penetrating mainstream culture. And all of these lefties who helped elevate him and elevate his celebrity.
And wanted his money.
Yes, now deny that fact, that he had achieved success in a way that certainly no other conservative or identified Republican had since Ronald Reagan, essentially. But what was interesting was that this is somebody who emerged, who came from completely outside the Beltway GOP establishment. It was a shot in the arm. And initially, he was not my first choice. And I had to
Out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Who was?
So Ted Cruz.
Okay.
Although
My second choice. Scott Walker was my first choice.
Yes. But the thing is that he was a paradigm. He wasn't just a paradigm shifter. He was a paradigm smasher. And so by the time we got through the primary process, obviously there was no question about who the choice was there. I mean, come on.
Sure.
But because he had embraced the number one issue, the most existential issue of our time, there were a couple of moments to me that solidified it. And one was when he did something that no other Republican establishment official had ever done before. He brought angel families to the stage and made them such a key, important constituency. And I know that we have at least one angel mom in the
Agnes,
audience.
where are you? There you are. Stand up.
Please stand up. Thank you. Thank you. This is what it's all about. And it sounds like everybody in this room knows Agnes.
We do. We have a number of them in our community, and we're blessed that she has grown into an amazing spokesperson. Her husband is running for political office for a water board, ran for city council position. So they're fully engaged.
It's the embodiment of the spirit that drives me every single day, that it's not enough to preach. It's not enough to speak. We have to get up off the sidelines and fight this fight on the ground, boots on the ground. And for those of you who bought the book or are considering buying the book, I mentioned Agnes in the book on media, the chapter on media, with her encounter with that open borders moron, Jim Acosta. So love her for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes. So Donald Trump comes down the escalator and wages a very interesting, non-traditional, big hands, little hands campaign in the primary. And eventually, he's our nominee. He wages battle with Hillary Clinton. Those debates are still, great viewing. And then what happened on November 8th, of course, is etched in infamy. It's a video I love to watch a couple of times a month to just watch the meltdowns of the media.
Yeah. I was here for the 94 Northridge earthquake. This was on the order of the Richter scale, political Richter scale of that.
Exactly. Well said. And then he takes office, and then what unfolds from there, and we're going to get to immigration, but I just want to kind of close the loop with Donald Trump and really soliciting your view of what unfolded. What happens from there? And literally, even with the beginning of the Electoral College, remember all the people that wanted the electors to change their vote? Right. I mean, this has been a 24/7 onslaught on Donald Trump, and yet the guy just keeps on ticking. It's amazing. It's like he feeds on it.
Yeah. I mean, he is my spirit animal.
He's like that. He's like in Ghostbusters. Remember at the end when they kept injecting energy into the Stay Puft and it just kept growing and growing? Yes. That's exactly what it seems to be happening with him.
Who all watched the press conference today?
I
It
didn't have a
was
chance to.
fantastic.
Tell us.
It was fantastic.
Oh,
I mean,
with the
he took-
German
right, with the Italian
Italian prime minister.
right. And, he took on the entire global elitist leftist press, and he has stood his ground and has kept his promises, not only on immigration and sovereignty issues, but on putting America first, defending his stance on tariffs, defending his stance on refusing to keep our soldiers engaged in endless wars.
Right.
And, this is the populist wing of the Republican Party that has been suppressed for so long by the Beltway establishment. And I think what's important here strategically is these battles are being played out in every single state party across the country.
They are.
And it's about damn time.
That's right. I agree. And in California too.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the press conference today. I want to one little incident that's unfolded, this withdrawal of troops from Syria that's caused so much angst on the left. I mean, they were for ending endless wars, and all of a sudden they want to keep them going, and they're like, why are you taking our people out? There's more and more that we're learning, and it's kind of a metaphor for everything else that Donald Trump is going, and we're going to segue into the immigration issue with this. What we learned, all we hear is that Donald Trump's going to withdraw troops and the establishment goes nuts. What's he doing? He's going to endanger. I mean, the Kurds, they fought with us. There's so much history over there that we don't understand that goes back hundreds of years. And yet what's being revealed is that this was in many ways a very bold and important move because Turkey was going to do this whether we were there or not.
Correct. That's right. And I think the bottom line for most people watching this is they tune out the never Trumpers on the right. They tune out these bizarro flippers on the left. And what they see is American soldiers being sent to defend other countries' borders when our border is under siege.
That's a bit of hypocrisy there.
Yeah.
Great way to bring it around to this issue because
You teed it right up for me, Don.
there you go. So Donald Trump has made immigration an important issue, and there's so many battlefronts in the issue. There's the actual border, which is what gets a lot of attention. But then there are so many other things that we never really hear about in the 24/7 news flow. It's very easy to go down and take a picture. Donald Trump uses it very well for advancing the narrative and those those publicity opportunities. But there's so many other things that are happening behind the scenes with that issue. As you were researching your book, what really stood out for you as a kind of a new, was there a new aha in what you dug up, something that you went, wow, never even saw that coming?
Yeah, so there was a lot. And of course, this is the third of my 7 books that I've dedicated to immigration policy. And the first book I wrote was called Invasion in 2002, in the aftermath of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And what I did was seek to expose how all the ways that we failed to enforce not only our physical borders, but interior enforcement and our front lines with these consular offices overseas, which were neglecting in the most basic ways to vet the people who are applying to get into our country, whether they were applying to get a green card or a short-term visa. I mean, we have to remember that all 19 of the September 11th hijackers came into the country legally. And then a large number of them had overstayed their visas, and we had no way to be able to enforce those rules and to eject them from the country before they plotted and succeeded in murdering 3,000 innocent people. And so I looked systemically at everything, and that was 17 years ago. And my primary policy recommendation back then was that we needed a complete immigration moratorium. Because 17 years ago—
Oh, you're such a hater.
I know. Because 17 years ago, we could see the signs of a complete overwhelming of the system. There were already hundreds of thousands of backlogged applications for green cards. There were these hundreds of thousands of deportation evaders. Okay, these aren't the otherwise law-abiding people that Geraldo Rivera and Jim Acosta's hearts are always bleeding over. These are the worst of the worst criminal aliens, the type of people who are involved in separating American families permanently every day in
Permanent
this
family
country.
separation, right?
And so there's a lot I already knew, but with Open Borders Inc., the thrust of it was to collect the financial dots and to connect those dots. And everybody in this room is familiar with the role, obviously, that George Soros played, but he couldn't do it alone. And that is one of the primary messages that I'm getting out there. And it's that people need to understand that many of the religious nonprofit organizations and charities that they've been giving money to are then turning around and using it to subsidize illegal alien shelters in Mexico and illegal alien sanctuary churches in the United States. Many of these, charities with these anodyne names like Save the Children or Doctors Without Borders are turning around and subverting our sovereignty every single way possible. In some ways, by inducing people to come here illegally and trespass our borders, but in other ways through legal programs. For example, the refugee resettlement racket, which is responsible for bringing at least 60 refugee hotties.
I love that name. I saw that in the book and I was like, that's great. Refugee hotties.
Refugees who falsely claimed political or ethnic or religious persecution, who then turned around and abused our generosity to plot to kill people here in America or back in the countries that they said they were so afraid to live in. And the refugee resettlement racket has enriched many of these organizations. I'm a Catholic, and I was alarmed to see that billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies are going to the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. By the way, so many of these bishops were trained and steeped in a Alinskyite methodology and ideology. The social justice wing of the Conference of Catholic Bishops has basically become frontline resistors against the Trump agenda. Many of these groups have filed amicus briefs on behalf of illegal aliens who are going all the way up to the Supreme Court to fight for subsidized abortions, subsidized employment benefits, subsidized welfare benefits, and permanent deportation shields. So, it's bad enough that you've got the liberal judges like you have here. Of course, it's not just the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, right? It's all of these rogue, I call them sanctuary anarchists, right? They're basically the equivalent of Antifa. Antifa wears
black
masks,
robe,
right? And these guys wear black robes, and they're issuing nationwide injunctions from their lower court benches to block our president's plenary powers to determine immigration policy. And the fact is that in many, many ways, our own money is subsidizing it.
Wow. You answered my second question because I wanted to clarify that these organizations aren't just benign, useful idiots, but they're actually part of the problem. They're doing it. It's a conscious thing they're doing, and they believe that this needs to be done. Is it that let me ask you this. Do you think it's because they believe that in the narrative that America is somehow in its DNA evil, that it needs to repent for sins that we've created around the world by, I don't know, some of these third world countries that we've gone in and harvested resources, whether it's oil or precious metals? Do they believe that there's a sin that needs to be dealt with, or what is their motivation? Why are they doing it? Is it because it's not, you allude, it's not just about the money. They're in this for a specific objective.
Yeah, I think a lot of the true believers are driven by ideology. I mean, come on, let's just say it. They hate this country. They want to see it destroyed. And that is why the subtitle of the book is, who's funding America's destruction? And yes, so a lot of it is about some sort of penitence that they're seeking. And the penitence is the sacrifice of our entire country. A lot of it is pure financial motive. And so, you've got a lot of these big businesses that want endless pipelines of cheap foreign workers, pursuit of the almighty dollar at the expense of American families and American citizens and American workers. And then I think, with the George Soroses of the world, that they're very explicit about what their goal is.
Mhm.
Their goal is to destroy American sovereignty and replace it with global governance. And you see that, the proof of concept of that is the way in which the United Nations partners with these government subcontractors and works with the deep state in the State Department, plus, by the way, billions of dollars that's allocated by the Health and Human Services Department to prop up all of these facilities that hold these illegal aliens and their family members and their fake families. You see this phenomenon, and I talk about it in the book. What is that? It's a magnet. It's a pull factor. They're being incentivized in large part by settlement, court settlement that was agreed to by a Clinton judge, Dolly G, here in Southern California, almost 2 decades ago, called the Flores settlement. Congress didn't vote on it. The people didn't vote on it.
And it's now it's like law. It's
not law.
But it's like law.
Yeah, but they treat it as if it's such. And it wasn't until Donald Trump came along and said, hey, no, we're not abiding by that. We don't have to. And that has helped shut this revolving door, because they just made it up out of whole cloth. Oh, well, if you're here with a minor, then you can only be detained for 20 days and then we'll release you, never to be seen again.
Wow. All right. So this flood of people that comes over the southern border has resulted in finally Mexico appears, according to some headlines, to have turned back a caravan of roughly 2,000 individuals. Who is it that's moved? Did this start as an organic movement in these 3 Central American countries where people were just legitimately trying to find a better life and they took advantage of it? Or has it been orchestrated from the very beginning?
I believe it's been orchestrated from the very beginning. And you can look at the 60s and 70s when the far left sanctuary movement, it wasn't just Catholics, there were evangelical Christians in the Southwest who organized these caravans. And so it has this feeling of just being spontaneous. And yet I map what is essentially a bed and breakfast network that stretches from Central America all the way up Mexico. There are UN officials, there are local Mexican officials that have been involved in basically being a Sherpa service with these routes. And you can actually go on the internet. There are now apps that
Really?
Help illegal aliens communicate with each other as they hop from shelter to shelter. And so I half joked in chapter 1 of the book, which is called Sin Fronteras, Without Borders, All Aboard the Caravan Cartel, that soon we're going to have Yelp and TripAdvisor reviews of these places. I was only half joking.
I just booked an Airbnb. Maybe I should look for some of them.
I was only half joking, but it turns out that there are reviews of some of these facilities now online. Wow. And now everybody is getting a cut. And that is the message here, is that you've got to follow the money to find the truth. And of course, the reason why we have not ever had full enforcement of employer sanctions, of course, is because many of these big businesses are not just benefiting because they've got this pipeline of cheap foreign workers that are undercutting American workers and people who are here legally. But they, of course, get a cut when billions in remittances are sent back by illegal alien workers to their family members in their home countries. And even more shockingly, it's not just Wells Fargo, it's not just Bank of America or Bank of Illegal Alien America. It is the Federal Reserve itself. This was very shocking to me, and this had not ever been reported before. I found a paper that documented how the Federal Reserve ran its own, and to this day still does, its own remittance program. And they were holding carnivals and fairs in Minnesota to recruit illegal alien customers by providing them phone live video streaming services so that they could call their family members back home and show their faces and let them know we've signed up with the Federal Reserve's Directo a Mexico program for remittances.
Wow. Well, the more you talk about this, the more overwhelming it feels. You've been working your way around the country, both on book tours as well as supporting local groups in their activism efforts. You've been with at ICE facilities. Tell us what you see working in other communities that people are organizing to do that you, if you had the opportunity to run a brainstorming, mobilize this group into activism, what would you begin to lead us into? What would be your advice about the things that we should be doing here in Southern California, here in the Inland Empire, in order to play a role in stopping everything that you've outlined here?
So number one is to try and defund Open Borders, Inc. in your own daily lives. And there are some easier ways to do that and some are harder. For example, I have an entire chapter in the book on the Hollywood hypocrites, right? I call them a Holly Wall. And by the way, I was just in Beverly Hills the other day for an event. And in the opening of that chapter, I describe all of the high walls and bulletproof windows and armed 24/7 gated communities,
Right.
that the most sanctimonious of Open Borders celebrities live behind, while they preach that we should be forced to bear all of the consequences of their Open Borders virtue signaling. So it's easy to say, yeah, no, I'm not going to give any more money to Chrissy Teigen or John Legend, especially when you know that these anti-Trump radicals are turning around and taking the money that they earn from Americans and then pouring it into law nonprofits that are sending people down to the border to do these know your rights seminars and
Right.
coach people on fake asylum stories. So easy one there, right? I think it's a little harder.
So stop the funding. Try to
Stop
do
the
whatever we
funding.
can to interrupt that. Find local
Yes.
Catholic organizations and the others that you outline in your book and get involved in trying to interrupt their operations.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And then, of course, supporting the groups that are on the front lines, doing the things that I believe are totally necessary to change the equation here. And I talked about how these illegal aliens are suing and blocking all of President Trump's enforcement measures all the way up to the Supreme Court. Well, we've got great organizations like Judicial Watch that are pushing back on the other side. And that they're making a difference here in California.
Right.
Because
Voter
yes,
issue. Yeah, the registration issue.
it is so important. And I've covered illegal alien voting fraud since I worked in Southern California. There are many counties where it did make a difference. The same thing is happening in Colorado too. And you know that they're going to do everything they can to pull out all the stops and cheat to win in 2020. So, redirecting your money from these Open Borders groups to the sovereignty-minded groups is especially
Like
important.
Judicial Watch. Supporting that.
Absolutely. And then there are many groups on the front lines on immigration enforcement that have been out there long before Donald Trump embraced the agenda. Groups like the Federation for American Immigration Reform, Numbers USA. And if you're not familiar with these groups, you should absolutely start following them on Twitter. Go to the websites for their incredible information. Center for Immigration Studies, another one. And I use the book to highlight all of the work that so many of these incredible researchers have done. I wouldn't be able to do the book without them.
Awesome. All right. So a little tips on activism. Now that you've given us a little guidance about how we can do this better. We can help you though. And what I talked to the small group that was here in advance, some of the VIP people, I encourage the folks here that didn't have a Twitter account to get a Twitter account, because recently the cancel culture got Brigitte Gabriel. What can we do well, here's what we're going to do. Everybody who has a cell phone right now, if you haven't already taken a picture of us up here, you need to take a picture of us up here and then tweet that to Real Donald Trump. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a picture of you out there and I'm going to tweet it to Real Donald Trump and let him know that there's a bunch of people here that are really upset with him. And if he wants us to help him, he needs to help us and do something about this cancellation at Mar-a-Lago. So get your cameras out, take a picture, and send it to Real Donald Trump and let him know that, canceling Brigitte Gabriel, we're taking this personally. You know, Trump supporters deserve better, and he needs to make sure he does what he can do in order to do that. Tell us, give us, is there any update on this as far as getting the event reestablished at Mar-a-Lago? Can we call Mar-a-Lago? Would that help? If Mar-a-Lago took incoming calls from us,
Yes.
and said, "Hey, you guys, you can't do this. You're encouraging more of it," because them knuckling under is encouraging other organizations to do the same and being an example.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about, is the precedent that's being set by capitulating to the Southern Poverty Law Center and Council on American Islamic Relations. And you will all know well here how active CARE is, especially in Southern California, in Los Angeles, in manufacturing these hate smears in order to silence us. And when they smell weakness and when they smell blood, they capitalize on it. They have fully embraced the by any means necessary playbook of the social justice warriors of the left. And there's a very important chapter in Open Borders Inc. on this, because the wars on our borders, our sovereignty, and our free speech are all interrelated. What's most dangerous about Silicon Valley is that they have welcomed these SPLC and CARE hitmen into their inner offices to help them design algorithms to target people who support Trump's agenda and who support immigration enforcement and sovereignty. So as long as we can stay on these platforms in large numbers, it's sort of like whack-a-mole. They can only take out so many of us. But I also encourage people to support many of the brave allies and friends of mine who identify in the book, who've been pushed off these platforms, but who are now waging war in court against them. Laura Loomer, yes. And by the way, Laura Loomer, my friend, is running for Congress in Florida,
right,
against Lois Frankel. She just announced this week that she had raised nearly $150,000, outraising all of the competition combined. And she is fighting not only the far left, but also the Republican establishment as well. And the fight that she's facing is exactly the fight that our president is facing in so many ways too. And I've talked about this and highlighted it in so many of my appearances across the country. We are waging an internal battle within the Republican Party, and many grassroots Tea Party folks, independents within the Republican Party here in California know it. You don't want to be co-opted by the same losers that have helped destroy this country in partnership with the left.
Right. You mentioned Republican parties, the establishment. We had a majority in Congress for 2 years and probably could have pushed through some immigration reform. Goodlatte had a bill.
Yes.
What did you think of Goodlatte's bill?
Goodlatte's bill was excellent. And who was it torpedoed by? Paul Ryan, right? The Paul Ryan, John McCain, open borders wing of the Republican Party is largely to blame for the mess that we're in today.
Wow. All right. Give it up for Michelle Malkin. She has done an amazing job. Every year we have a conservative conference out here in the Inland Empire. It's called the Unite IE Conservative Conference. You've never spoken to our conference before.
I'm here.
What do you guys think? Michelle Malkin at 2020 Unite IE Conservative Conference? All right, we're going to be together tomorrow night as well. Somehow between tonight and tomorrow night, we need to make sure we exchange information, because I think the people of the Inland Empire deserve a return visit from Michelle Malkin.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, give it up for Michelle Malkin.
Thank you.
Thank you.